Hey guys, thanks so much for checking back in. We're super excited about what God is doing in your life and in your communities. And one of the main reasons why these wonderful people are here watching this video today is because their lead pastor had a vision to reach the youth in their community, and want to partner with them to see the gospel poured into the lives of teenagers in their church and in their community. And so already from the start, we know that there's great energy and excitement behind them from their lead pastors. One of the things in any relationship that we know for it to be a healthy, successful relationship is there needs to be commitment, right? There's commitment in a relationship. Let's talk a little bit about, in this video, as we talk about partnering with your pastor, let's talk about that idea of commitment and how commitment is a part of this healthy relationship between the volunteer or between the youth team workers and their lead pastor. Aaron, if you want to get us started.
Yeah, I think it's so important for you as a volunteer, right? You're going to be the youth leader, your youth pastor, right? Or you're launching the youth ministry in your church. Your lead pastor has chosen you. There's been some kind of conversation that's taken place. And one of the biggest things that a lead pastor needs, and that your church needs, and that your students need, and that the parents of those students need is commitment.
Yeah.
Right? It starts with you committing to, I'm here for it. I'm here for this process. I'm here for launching this youth ministry. We've talked a lot in a lot of the other videos about the fact that discipleship takes time. This takes time, and this takes commitment, right? Yeah. So I think it's so important that your pastor knows that you're all in on this, and you're committed. And I think with that also comes a real honest conversation between you and your pastor as to, how do you define that commitment? Like, what is involved in that? Because you're not committing to a full-time job here. We recognize that. You're committing to do this as a volunteer, as a bivocational person. And so commitment is the foundation, but then also making sure that you're really clear with your pastor on what that commitment level is, how much time you have to put into that.
Yeah. I would just add to that too when it comes to, commitment is an easy love language of lead pastors.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because they want to know that, hey, this person's dependable. I can trust that they're going to handle this, that I don't get a call where youth are at the door going, there's nobody here, and now I've got to problem solve this and figure it out. So commitment to be present and be there, but also I would say take it a step further. If you want to build and develop a great relationship and trust your lead pastor, be early to things. Be at least on time, but maybe early at everything. Right. Be consistent in what you say you're going to do, actually do. Yeah. Consistent in your communication. Make that commitment that I'm going to go above and beyond to make sure I'm a dependable person in every aspect, whether it's a trip or a youth group night or whatever.
And it's commitment to the youth ministry that you're helping launch too, but broader than that, and maybe even deeper than that, is commitment to that church and to that community, and commitment to the vision and leadership of that church, commitment to being a participating member of the church, to being a tithing member and a giver of the church. Like, all of those commitments are huge, and I love the way you said it. Like, that's the love language of any lead pastor, is that they know that you're dependable.
That's good. And both of you stated this, but commitment is all about trust, right?
Yeah.
It's about trust, and that's important. Another healthy aspect of a relationship, if you want to have a healthy partnership with your lead pastor, we talked about commitment. The second is, and I'm a married man, you guys are married men, it's important to realize communication is a key in a healthy relationship, not just with your spouse, but certainly with your lead pastor as well. Jared, help us understand a little bit how is communication so crucial in partnering with your lead pastor?
Yeah. I was recently listening to a podcast, and they were talking about every great war, you could almost boil it down to some breakdown in communication between groups of people. And I think that's kind of true relationally, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so much of our issues oftentimes happen because there's miscommunication. There's expectation over here that's not understood here. And so what that means is we got to be aware of that and go above and beyond to try to help there be clear communication between yourself as a youth leader and your lead pastor. And so I would encourage you to, number one, meet with them and try to get their expectations. So what can I do for you? Because every leader is different. Some leaders are going to be like, hey, if you could send me an email every week of what you're working on, and others are going to be like, hey, please don't bog me down with those emails. Like, I've got
Yeah.
so much going on.
Yeah.
So understanding what do they need from me, but also letting them know what do you need from them. So maybe you're say to your lead pastor, here's what I need to be able to do this well, and let them know, communicate that to them so that you're not getting frustrated with them because they're not giving you what you need. Make sure they're aware of what you need and you're aware of what they need.
Yeah, and I think there's some things specific to youth ministry that are very important for a youth pastor to be communicating to their lead pastor, right? So I think you want to communicate like the schedule, for instance, whether that's the weekly schedule or a monthly event or an annual event, right? You need to communicate that. If you ever take a group of students away overnight, like on a retreat, then that's even a little bit more communicating that needs to take place, right? That the lead pastor needs to know. So, communicating those aspects of youth ministry, I think are really important. I think communicating to your pastor when maybe there's been a challenge, or an issue with a student, or maybe a student has come to you and has confided in you some things that are going on in their life that are very sensitive in nature, but that's got to be communicated to your pastor right away.
The last thing a lead pastor wants to do is respond to an issue from a parent or another family member or someone in their church about something that happened that they don't know anything about, right? Nothing more terrifying for a leader to have to try to respond to a situation that they don't have the information for. And so if something breaks or if someone breaks.
I've learned that the hard way. Don't let them be surprised.
And I'd also add, like, make sure you communicate the great stuff that is happening too. Like, hey, pastor, we had 5 kids that showed up, for our small group. Like, that's something we're celebrating. Pastor, we had a student that committed their life to Christ, right? Or pastor, we got 7 kids that signed up for camp this year. Like your pastor wants to hear that too, because they're praying for you and they're believing for young people to be reached through the youth ministry that you're going to launch and that they're partnering with you to launch. And so, communicating, some of the challenging stuff, but also communicating some of the great stuff. And I'd just add one more thing too, as you launch a youth ministry, and as you begin to kind of grow the youth ministry and you start to maybe even do like some weekly times where you're getting together and maybe you're doing some Bible studies or discussions or whatever, like communicate to your pastor what you're studying in God's Word. I think that's huge, and that it gives your pastor the opportunity to speak into some of those deep discipleship things that you are passing on to your students.
Yeah, and chances are, if they've asked you to reach these youth in their church or in their community, you're also connected to their families as well. They deeply care about these people, and so giving them information that helps them understand their congregation and who they're pacing with, they can't divide themselves any more than what they have as a single individual.
Right.
But you're an extension of them, and partnering with your leadership, you're an extension of their leadership as well. And so there's relationships that you're going to have that you're able to bring that information to them so that they know what's going on in their church and what's happening in the lives of their people. And all that is really helpful as a lead pastor that's guiding and kind of directing their congregations. One of the things we also understand about communication is it has to be intentional, right? These things don't accidentally happen. So you talked about like scheduling times to get together. Now a lot of the leaders that are watching this, they might not be on staff at their church, and so they have to really think about, when can I meet with our lead pastor? Just a little word of advice. Sunday morning before they're getting ready to go on the stage to preach.
Not a good
Maybe
time.
not a great time to deal with some heavy duty sorts of things. Offer a word of encouragement at that point.
Sounds like you've also learned that the hard way.
Sunday afternoon after they're tired from preaching.
Exactly.
Same thing. Probably not the greatest time. Yeah.
Exactly. That's good. So be intentional about communication, finding the right times, and share as much information as you can so that they can make the decisions that they need to based on that. So we talked about the commitment in relationship. We talked about the communication in relationship. And one of the things that's really important for a healthy relationship is that there's clarity about the relationship, about responsibilities. You talked a little bit about this earlier, helping everyone understand what is my role, what are the expectations. Aaron, if you want to get us started with this a little bit.
Yeah, so you want clarity, right?
Yeah.
Your pastor wants clarity. It's impossible to grow any healthy ministry without clarity, right? So I think some specific areas in which you want clarity related to youth ministry. So you want clarity in how much time your pastor expects you to have available to help with this, right? So
And
that
be
just-
honest about
be
your
honest about that. What is your availability? How many hours per week are you going to be available to help launch a youth ministry? And have an understanding between you and your pastor that that's okay, whatever that number is, right? So I think you want clarity on the time. I think you want clarity on what your pastor's expectations are.
Yeah.
You know, is he expecting you to have a weekly youth service, or is he expecting you to have a weekly youth service and a monthly activity? You know, like, gain clarity. Ask questions. Make sure that you just present those things to your pastor and ask him or her, you know, like what is it that you're looking for? I think you also want clarity on what your pastor's vision for the youth ministry is, right? And allow your pastor to speak into that. And they might give you broad freedom, right? And just say, hey, you just go and you just run. Or they might have a very specific vision that God has birthed in their heart for youth ministry. So those would be some of the initial areas of clarity in youth ministry that I would see. I don't know if you see any other ones there.
Yeah, I mean, just some practical ones that, again, I've learned the hard way. Have clarity on your lead pastor's pet peeves. Like, not everything's biblical. Some things are just annoying to them. And you're better served knowing what those things are so that you can avoid them, because it will just make your life easier. And obviously it also honors them. And so know what those things are. And that could be anything from wearing certain things, or what they have an expectation if you're meeting at the church, or it could be a million different things.
The way you left the building after.
The way you left the building, right?
Yeah.
Have clarity on that stuff, and I think it'll help go a long way.
I served one pastor who his pet peeve was long emails, right? And then I served another pastor, and his pet peeve was short emails. So it's like, you know, just okay.
Figure it out. learn
Nothing
it.
more or less spiritual about either one of those approaches. It's just kind of like, we'll work with it.
That's
Absolutely.
right. I think one of the things I'm hearing both of you say, as well as it relates to this idea of clarity, is honesty is going to help bring the most clarity to a situation. So you, as the leader, being honest about what your availability is, what you have to give, what your capacity is, situations that happen or occur. Honesty is always the best policy, is what they say.
And only add another thought here on clarity. If you don't have clarity, that's on you. Right? I think sometimes we can posture ourselves immaturely as leaders, and we can say, well, I don't know. Things just aren't clear. I wish they would make that more clear.
Yeah.
Right? Don't put that on your pastor who's trying to lead an entire church and all the difficulty and the complex things that happen in church leadership. You go ahead and take responsibility yourself and take the position of, if I'm not clear, if I don't have clarity, then it's on me to gain clarity. How do I do that? Communication.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I'm going to send the email, or I'm going to schedule the meeting. And when I schedule the meeting, I'm not going to waste my pastor's time. I'm going to send him in advance. Here's some questions that I could use some clarity on. And then we hit it and we've got clarity. And now you can walk away knowing, like, okay, cool, I got my marching orders. Things are very clear for me now. And that makes the relationship so much healthier.
Yeah, for sure. And then with that clarity, you can see how your youth ministry fits into the bigger community that is your local church.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. That's another great coaching point for youth ministry. Make sure you have clarity on how your pastor sees the youth ministry fitting into the greater vision of the church.
And as the lead pastor, as the head leader of your organization, you may be coined as the youth expert in the culture of youth, and that's why you've been asked to do it. But they're the leader that God has given vision for their church and their community, and so it's going to take takes some humility in any healthy relationship, and so that's where clarity really comes into play. Good communication comes into play, and them understanding you're committed to seeing youth ministry bloom and be a part of our whole church is healthy. Our kids and how they relate to the adults in our building, how they relate to the children in our building, and we're all in this together. We're not fighting for resources. We're not fighting for people.
Yeah.
We're in this mission together. And man, when we come around each other as a team and we see God do amazing things, it's a beautiful picture of what God can do when we're all working together in sync with one another, in relationship with each other. So we hope that these things are helpful for you as you think about what does it mean to partner with my lead pastor. This is new territory, we know, for many of you guys. Make sure everyone understands what you're committing to, communicate clearly, and make sure you get all the clarity you need to fulfill what God's called you to do. Thanks so much, guys.